It's time for this week's episode of Brandon's Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon's Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Durham Bulls social media assistant, Ellie Whittington. How are you doing today?
Hi, Brandon. Well, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to work in professional sports?
That's a great question. I think that when I decided that I wanted to be a journalist, I knew pretty quickly that I wanted to work in sports because I was doing some stories on local news. And the first scene that you go to that is like, I think one of my first assignments was a murder scene in Burlington, which was where I went to school. And I was like, oh my gosh, I do not enjoy this at all. And sports is something that brings people together. And then I was doing work in politics, which is obviously a very divisive topic. So working in sports was the one thing that brought me a lot of joy. And I could also see was bringing other people joy as well.
How did you know that you wanted to transform over to sports from coming from politics?
That's I knew at the same time I was doing sports reporting while I was also doing local news reporting when I was in undergrad. And so sports was where I found where I was really good at and what I knew the most about. And so I think it's something that I've always had a passion about, and sports was kind of what got me into wanting to be a journalist. And also I decided at that point, no matter what, I want to work in the sports business, whether that be journalism or something else.
What was it like to have the social media internship with the MLB?
Yes, so I did a semester in New York City. I went to a school called Marymount Manhattan College. It was kind of like a dual partnership between Elon University, where I got my undergraduate degree, and this school in New York. So I went to school there, and it was a requirement for us to have an internship while in school. And so I knew that I wanted to work in sports, and I've always loved baseball. So if you look at my resume, it seems that I've worked a lot in baseball, and that's kind of my niche, which is, I consider that to be true. But I also love all other sports, most other sports as well, and I'm pretty knowledgeable about them. So when I got the internship through Major League Baseball, it was kind of a girl in my hall at Elon. Her mom had a connection. And so this family had taken me to dinner, and I'm very passionate about sharing what you're passionate about. And so while I was 18 years old at this dinner table, I'm like, yeah, so I want to work in sports, and I think I want to work in baseball. And it just so happened that they had a connection to someone that knew someone that could possibly help. So I applied and then got the internship, which was phenomenal. And I grew a lot, I would say, as a 19-year-old living in New York City and interning for Major League Baseball.
What was that like, of course, being an intern at such a young age for Major League Baseball, and particularly moving from North Carolina all the way to New York?
It's quite daunting. I've always said that moving to New York City was pure culture shock. I'm from a very small town in North Carolina, so moving at that age, one of my first weeks, I was standing on a street corner because I needed to buy a pillow. I had shipped all my stuff there, but simple necessities, I was like, I'll buy when I get there. And so it was one of my, I guess the first night I was there, I went to look for a pillow. And if you don't know, if you've never been to New York, it's quite hard to find. You just can't go buy a pillow. Like we do in North Carolina, we could just drive to Target or Walmart or Home Goods. And so it was quite a feat to do that. And I was like, okay, this is a totally different culture. And I'd been to New York a lot growing up and not actually lived there. And so working for Major League Baseball, and I would say this to anyone wanting to work in sports, is you have to forget about the name, and you have to forget about kind of the clout. At the end of the day, it's all a company and it's a job. So yes, it was Major League Baseball, but when I walked through that door, it was just any other job that I had to go and do my best at and prove myself.
What were some of your roles and responsibility running the social media for Major League Baseball as an intern?
Yes. So at many big companies, social media is quite a big department, and it continues to grow as social media has become huge phenomenon that it is. And I was an intern in 2015, which is when Snapchat was kind of growing and was really big. I know it still is, but we put a lot more emphasis on that. This is pre-Instagram stories. This is before TikTok even existed, or even like, I guess, kind of the end of Vine, and we didn't even know what kind of video platform was going. So when I was there, I partnered actually with Bitmoji. If you remember, if you still use the Bitmoji, they can wear MLB clothes and hats. And so I was at MLB before that partnership was made. So my boss asked me one day to do all the research that I could on Bitmoji because they wanted to partner with them. So it's cool now when you look at a Bitmoji and they can wear their MLB clothing. I was a part of that. I also created MLB only had one YouTube channel just for Major League Baseball, but they wanted to have a channel for each team. And so I would research things about the team and create a playlist. For example, some teams have really popular mascots, and so their mascot needed their own playlist on YouTube, whereas there are 3 MLB teams that don't even have a mascot. So obviously that wasn't important. So I created YouTube channels for all 30 teams. And also this was when the blue check mark was becoming a thing. And so for the postseason, they wanted me to go and make sure every player that was playing in the postseason was verified. So I almost did like Instagram stalking to see if it was their actual account, and almost manually verified these players, where now we know it's a much simpler process. And if you are at that level, then you're automatically verified.
Of course, with having such a big impact when Bitmoji was around, how did that feel to know now when you look at Bitmojis? Oh, that was me who created that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I think with anything to see that and be like, I was a part of this, or even to go on YouTube, and if you go on a team's page and be like, I created that, what would now be 6 years ago, is really cool. And I think the biggest thing for me is to see it grow, is to, I was a part in these baby steps, but to see what it has become now, to see the brand that Major League Baseball is on social media. And well, they've always had such a strong brand, but just to see how that's grown, and to see little things like my Bitmoji wearing a hat, and to be like, oh, I was there for that.
What was it like going from, of course, the Major League Baseball office to working with the New York Yankees as a sales associate?
Mm-hmm. For anything in sports, I would say working for the league office is very different than working for a team in general. And it's so different, but so much the same, because at the major league level, you were worried about all 30 teams. And obviously when I was at the Yankees, I am selling this Yankees product. And though I am biased in saying this, depending on the team depends on your brand. The New York Yankees and the San Diego Padres are 2 different brands. The New York Mets and the Texas Rangers are 2 different brands. And so you have to know your audience. And me being from North Carolina, I grew up a Braves fan until I was in middle school. And that's another story of how I became a Yankees fan. But anyway, they sell this premium product, whereas the kind of fan that you're trying to get at Yankee Stadium, the team that is the New York Yankees, to know what that is and to really hone in on this niche is very different than working for Major League Baseball, where you're covering a wide umbrella of all of the teams.
What was that like to work with the Yankee stadiums and know how rich and important their history was to them, that obviously it was able to be sold, versus, of course, if you go to like Miami Marlins, not many people really know Miami Marlins.
Yes, in my sports education background, we studied once the most recognizable logos in the world, and the New York Yankees and Dallas Cowboys, and I think LA Lakers are on the top of that list. And so to know that you can go anywhere in the world and see a New York Yankees logo, and you might not even know that that's a baseball team, but you know what that is. And so it was really cool to be at the Yankees and see that a lot of our people attending games were coming to Yankee Stadium because it was a tourist attraction. Yes, they're playing baseball, but you want to come to Yankee Stadium to see almost this monumental thing. And so to know the Yankees brand is such a big deal. And when I started there, they gave us immense training the first 2 weeks. I have a book, a binder about this thick. I call it my Yankees Bible, where I studied every front office staff person. If you were to get on the elevator with Hal Steinbrenner, you better know who Hal Steinbrenner is. And so to be able to study that, and I knew every seat in that stadium. They would take us around, and to sell a ticket, I knew what ticket I was selling, and I knew what it was going to be like to sit in that seat and what experience the fan was going to get in that seat.
What was it like working with Yankee Stadium? And did you ever get to watch games at Yankee Stadium after you sold the tickets and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a dream of mine, and still I pinch myself every time I get to go. I think Yankee Stadium is one of the most incredible places in the world, and it is like my happy place. And so to get off the train, most people would take the train to the ballpark. And so you come up from underground if you take the D train or B, and then 4 and 6 are up above. But anyway, you come off the train, and it's just like this aha moment. And to be able to do that every day and go to work and to get off the train and be like, oh my gosh, like I get to work here. This is phenomenal. Was pretty incredible. And yes, it was really cool. The days that we wouldn't go to games, I would leave work at 5 o'clock, which is for a night game that would be doing batting practice. So to be leaving the stadium and Aaron Judge is hitting BP, I'm not going to complain about that.
What was the transition like from going from New York to back to North Carolina to go to Elon?
Yeah. Elon is full of people from the Northeast. So honestly, being at Elon felt a lot like being in New York City in a weird way. It was hard. The transition, the first time did my internship in New York, coming back was really hard to come back to this college setting, because when you're going to school in New York City, you feel very grown up and you're living this adult life. And then going back to college was kind of reverse culture shock in a way. Like I didn't really want to be back there. I wanted to be back in New York. I actually thought about transferring a few times. And then I came back from New York and then ended up going to grad school at NC State. And I think everything in life happens for a reason, and my path makes sense now. But at the time, yeah, it's been interesting.
What was your role as the sports reporter for Elon?
Yes, one of my favorite things that I've ever done. I was a anchor for Elon Phoenix Weekly, which is a local sports show that aired at Elon and also aired on ESPN3 in the region. And so I'd report on Elon sports, which is, I know that Elon sports are not what the UNC and NC States and Duke is, but the cool part about that was I also got to host a sports debate show called One-on-One Sports, which is a lot like First Take if you watch ESPN. And so we got to debate sports, which I loved doing. I love sports. I love talking about sports. Anytime anyone wants to talk about something more than just the score, like if you want to debate players or debate teams, I love that. And so this gave me the opportunity to do that. And I was actually the first woman to ever host the show. Sports is still a very male-dominated world, and we're changing that, but it's okay. And to learn how to, kind of stand up for yourself and be able to talk to these guys, and everyone that I worked with at Elon in sports has huge respect for me, and I have a lot of respect for them. And so it was really cool to be able to kind of debate in this atmosphere that at Elon had been predominantly male. The sports show won an Emmy before I was there, so it's a very good sports show, and we had an amazing set. So definitely kind of what set my sports career, and especially wanting to be in sports journalism, which is something that I still want to do, but kind of launched that.
That's pretty amazing. What was your time like as the grad assistant at NC State?
Yes. So after Elon, I knew I wanted to work in baseball. I graduated a semester early because baseball normally hires before the season in April. But NC State offered to pay for my master's degree. So they paid for my master's as well as gave me a stipend to do research. So the grad assistant, research assistant part is not as glamorous, but it was a lot of hard work, I will say that. And my research is something I'm very proud of. But while I was at NC State, I got to work some with NC State athletics, which is going back to the Elon thing. I say that I went to Elon for academics. I went to NC State for athletics. And it was really cool because I got to work with like the NC State baseball team, who this year just went to the College World Series. And I got to work with a football team some. and like covering their sports. And then as well as I volunteered a lot with the ACC, and I got to go to different tournaments. I worked women's and men's basketball tournaments, tennis tournaments, the baseball tournament that is at Durham Bulls Athletic Park, which is so fun to be able to work there now and be like, oh, this isn't my first rodeo here.
Of course, when you were working with the baseball team and the football team for NC State, what was that like, knowing that obviously you're from North Carolina? You've probably known NC State for a while. You've probably known like the football team as pretty good. What was that like?
Mm-hmm. Interesting enough, I grew up a Tar Heel fan. So I grew up a college basketball fan. I would say that was kind of the first sport that I really loved. And both of my parents are Tar Heel basketball fans. And so I remember being able to stay up past my bedtime to watch Carolina basketball. And so going to NC State for them was cool, but it wasn't Carolina. So I actually took half of my grad school classes at UNC. So I did half at NC State and almost half at Carolina, which was but my degree is from NC State. And so it was cool because NC State football, like going to an ACC school, to be able to experience that where I didn't come from that background at Elon was really phenomenal. And just to be able to be there, to be in a press box I say it's always so fun because you're with real sports fans who really know the team. So that was really cool.
What was the transition like from going from working in the college athletics to working in minor league sports with Durham Bulls?
Mm-hmm. It's very different. I tell people that all the time. There's a huge difference in rec league, college league, minor league, professional, or minor league as professional, major league. And I think for me personally, I like professional sports much more than college athletics. I like to watch college sports, but working in college sports is very, very different. You have to be a jack of all trades in both worlds, but definitely in college athletics, you normally don't just work one sport. You don't hone in on one sport. Like you're not only working for the baseball team, you're probably working for a fall and winter sport as well. Whereas in professional sports, I just work in baseball right now. And I really like that because I get to hone in and give my all to the baseball team, where in college athletics, you don't get to do that.
What was it like to become the social media assistant for their Durham Bulls?
Yes. So 2020 is a very long story of a really hard time of finding a job in sports. I was graduating with my master's degree. Obviously, the world shut down and didn't really have any direction of what's going to happen or when the sports world was going to open back up, when fans were going to be allowed to come. And so many teams lost so much money, especially the minor league system, because they didn't have a season last year. So I really didn't think it was even a possibility for me to be hired in minor league baseball. But I've loved going to the Durham Bulls games as I was in grad school at NC State. And so when I saw this job posting, I was like, wow, they're hiring for this season. That's incredible. Like, this is something that I like to do. I have experience in, and I want to get back in baseball, whatever that means. I will go and scrub the toilets at the GPAP if that means that they'll let me work baseball games. And so definitely been a wonderful experience, and it's a great place to work. And I obviously have really gotten to know this team and know the Durham Bulls brand, which, going back to working for the New York Yankees, it's this crazy parallel between the Yankees being such a worldwide recognizable brand, but in minor league baseball, I would say that the Durham Bulls is the most recognizable brand in minor league baseball. So it's cool to have that parallel where I'm selling this brand that's already established itself.
What is that like, working for a brand just like the Yankees, who are established, that have been noticeable by movies and other things like that?
Yeah, it's in social media or in marketing of any kind. I would say it's much easier to build upon an established brand. And so both of them having a brand, you are just building up this already incredible thing. You're not building a brand like the High Point Rockers, for example, who are brand new, and you're starting from the ground up, and you're building up, who is this team and what are they about, and who is this mascot and what is this. So I very much came into an established atmosphere, and it's really cool because people love the Bulls, and to be able to engage with people and this brand that they already know so well and this team that they already love is really exciting.
What is a typical game day like for you running the social media?
Great question. In sports, I would say that nothing is typical. You never know. There are days where it rains and we're pulling tarp 10 minutes before the game is supposed to start and everything is out the window. And so in that moment, you're talking to my social media manager. He's amazing. And so he's telling me, and we're talking together, like, what are we going to do about this situation? How are we going to share this? For example, we had an accident earlier in the year that was a pretty traumatic event where we had a pitcher that got hit. And so it's like, how do we, as social media, working in social media, how do you address this and how do you take care of it? And I would say that my boss did an incredible job of handling that from the PR side of things. But, there are days that we're celebrating big wins. There are days that we don't want to talk about the loss. We're going to focus on other things. And so I would say the day-to-day in social media world is always different.
Of course, as running the social media as an assistant, do you also travel to games like, let's say, the Durham Bulls might play Winston-Salem Dash? Are you going to the Winston-Salem Dash game to cover that so your fans know?
No. At the minor league level, I would say that there isn't a lot of coverage on road games across the board. Excuse me, there is coverage on minor league games, but not in person. So we have access to watch the games from here. There's not really a need, I would say, to cover it live there, because you can tweet watching a game. You can post a picture, while watching the game. And we're selling more of the Bulls brand at home, not so much on the road, right? Like, I'm not trying to sell tickets for the Norfolk Tide. It's like, great, I want to know how the team is doing there, but I'm not trying to hype up them playing in Norfolk. I care about them playing in Durham. And I would say that is a big difference between the minor league and the major league level, where at the major league level, wins and losses matter so much more to the brand. Whereas at this level, people come to baseball more for baseball and not so much for the wins and losses and how the team is doing.
Of course, running the social media on the home games, what are some of the things that you do to involve the fans?
Yeah, something I really love to do is run our Instagram story where I can ask questions, can make it interactive. The thing I love the most about social media is the two-way communication. So I can post something and someone can respond, or you can tweet something and someone can tweet back their opinion, or someone can DM you or message you. Whereas in traditional news outlets, that hasn't always been the case. If you were watching the nightly news to see what the score was to the Durham Bulls game, you were just hearing the score and you're not able to ask questions or respond. But with my role, I can share things, but also have people respond and how they're feeling and what they're enjoying and what they're doing at the game.
Can you talk about, of course, the balance of running the social media for the Durham Bulls and also your personal life and how those two balance and equal out?
Yes, I think that balance is an interesting word used there. I tell a lot of people working in sports means that you work nights and weekends, and you know that when you sign up for it. And so there are times that my social life takes a hit. I have missed weddings and friend events, and my friends will be going for happy hour after work at 5:00. And that's really when my day is ramping up because it's a game day. And so just accepting that this is a dream job and something that I absolutely love to do, but knowing that when you work in sports, you're giving away part of that balanced life.
Of course, can you talk about the balance on social media and how, of course, running a social media page for a team and then also making sure your social media presence is good? How is that balance like?
Yeah, I think that it's really hard. I've read on Twitter before, never judge a social media manager's own social media because we don't have time to do it. And I think that it's kind of true. The people that are best at social don't have the best social media platform because simply who has time. And when you spend so much time building up someone else's brand, it's hard to do yours. I think I do a fairly good job of it. I would say it could be much better. But even the past few weeks, I've been so drained from creating content, for someone else, that the thoughts of creating my own content is exhausting. And so I feel like people care about what I'm doing and love to see my work in sports from Ellie's brand, not from the Durham Bulls, but it's hard to do that sometimes when I'm exhausted. I don't want to touch social media at the end of the day.
Of course, working in social media, how hard is it to turn off that switch of like, okay, I'm not answering emails, I'm not posting this. This is my time to like just have personal time.
Mm-hmm. Extremely hard, because social media is the one thing that I feel like I can't turn off. I run accounts from my phone, so I'm seeing my notifications, but I can just as easily see the notifications on whatever brand I'm running. And it is hard to post something and not want to go and look at the comments or go and look at the messages. It's extremely hard for me personally to turn that off, because I'm always caring about my work and how it's doing and how it's performing and what people are thinking of it. And so I would say that is the one downfall, is that I often don't turn it off and I continue to check notifications. It's funny, there's been a few times I've been up really late and I'm like, if the Durham Bulls respond at 1 a.m., does that look suspicious? Like maybe I should wait to normal business hours.
What are some future things that you have in plan for the Durham Bulls in the social media?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We added TikTok, which was primarily what I was hired to work on, was TikTok a lot. And so I think as social media continues to grow and evolve, that there are going to be more platforms, there are going to be more features. We see that all the time. And I think it's hard to kind of keep up with sometimes, as I have to research of what's going well. Like, are Instagram Reels performing well? Is this beautifully aesthetic page what's doing the best on Instagram? Or funny videos, what are fans like on TikTok? Do they like our mascot? What do they like? Are they wanting to see more of the players? Are they wanting to know more about the players? And so I think moving forward, you plan day to day, week to week, month to month. What's popular? What's going on? And what are people engaging with?
How hard is it sometimes to plan month to month when sometimes you don't know what that month may hold?
Yes. So my manager is very much about kind of planning last minute and kind of taking the role of what's going on is what we're publishing. I'm more of a planner. I like to look ahead to say, oh, National Hot Dog Day is in July, so we need to have a post ready for this day in July about hot dogs, because people love baseball and they recognize like baseball with hot dogs, or associate the two. And so I want to plan, where he's more like, we take it day to day. And the thing is, with sports, you kind of have to. It's not like a clothing company where you know that you're having this new release next month and we can plan out what this release is. I don't know what's going to happen with the game today. I don't know that someone's going to hit a home run and it might be the biggest highlight that we have and that we need to post that. You can't plan things like that.
What is something that you learned now that you didn't know about before running social media, of course, for the Major League Baseball and also with the Durham Bulls?
I think the thing that I've learned the most, I think the advantage that I have is I almost grew up in this social media world. It was kicking off kind of at the time I was in middle school and high school. And so I learned as it evolved. And so I think that the cool thing about that is being involved in this from the business side of things. Something that I didn't know is what a business this was. And I think the business part of social kind of evolved as the platforms evolved and as I grew up. And so it's more than a hobby and it's became a job. And just to learn the analytics and how much attention is paid to the things behind the scenes was incredible. When I was at MLB, I could not believe the number of people that would read a tweet before it was ever tweeted, or how many people were looking at a post or creating a post. Someone was writing the caption, someone was making the graphic, someone was fact checking before something was even out. Because in my mind, it was just like, oh, someone thought of this and they posted the photo. No, that's absolutely not the case. And at different levels at the Bulls, I would say it's not that tedious. It just depends on what level and what you're producing. But I love the analytics behind social, and that's probably what I've learned the most.
What advice would you have somebody looking to get into social media on the professional sports level?
Mm-hmm. I would tell anyone wanting to work in sports at all that you're going to pay your dues. You're going to work a lot for free and you're going to work hard a lot. Going back to that working nights and weekends, it is a grind, and it is something that you have to really want to do. You have to love it to do it. And so you need to check yourself, I would say, first of all, before you even think about pursuing that. Is this what I want to do? And can I pour my all into it? Because when it is night 6 of a 6-game series, your creativity is, for me, is sometimes dead, because it's the same ballpark, it's the same team, it's the same game, and I have to come up with something new and exciting. And so if I didn't love the game of baseball, it would be very hard to do my job. And so first of all, I would say pay your dues. And then second of all, work hard, like be willing to learn from the people around you, ask questions. My coworkers would tell you I asked too many questions sometimes about them and about the job and about things, but I'm always wanting to learn. So you always have to be open to learning new things and being able to adapt to that.
That's wonderful advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media, along with the Durham Bulls at?
Yes. Well, thank you, Brandon, for having me and encouraging your listeners to follow me. All of my social media is at the Ellie Times on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, and feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk to anyone. And then the Durham Bulls at Durham Bulls on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well.
Thank you again, Ellie Whitman, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the Durham Bulls.
Thank you, Brandon.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Ellie, for your interview, and best of luck.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.